Okay, so the question that we have to ask here is, why did Hashem wait 50 days from the exodus of Egypt until we were supposed to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai? Why wasn't that we didn't receive the Torah immediately after we left Egypt? And the answer is that the Jewish people were just liberated from slavery. But we were not spiritually equipped to receive the Torah. And during this 50 days is the process of where we work on ourselves and develop ourselves and work on our character in order to be spiritually ready to receive something as great as the Torah, the greatest thing. You have to understand that the Jewish people were living in one of the worst places, the center of immorality, of vice at that time. Even though the Jews may have not been directly involved in whatever immoral acts that the Egyptians were engaging in, they were definitely influenced. It affected them. Your environment affects you. You think of the work, like you just imagine the woke world, and they say that Egypt was really the worst that could have been. So multiply it by whatever that could be. And that was where the Jews came from. Although we were liberated physically from the chains of slavery, we also had to liberate ourselves spiritually and prepare ourselves spiritually for receiving the Torah. He says that the high impact adventure of the Exodus, he says you have the 10 miraculous plagues and the splitting of the Red Sea. Like I said, it launched the Jews into physical freedom, but the miracles of Egypt were only a jumpstart to the spiritual possibilities that lay ahead. And a one-time experience, as powerful as it is, doesn't permanently change a person's emotional attitude. And the change and adjustment in the personality and who we are and how we think is only possible through practice and adjustment over time. He writes this thing here, this rabbi, that he reminds me of the scene of Trading Places. I guess it's a movie with Eddie Murphy, where overnight he becomes rich. He walks into this penthouse, and what does he do? He starts stealing. Because he was a beggar, a poor person on the street, and all of a sudden he's entering this luxury. It was still a shock for his system, and he resorted back to what he knew about himself, about how to behave, and that was to steal everything that was in this expensive house, even though the home belonged to him. We don't want to receive the Torah with that slave mentality. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want us to be at that base level in order for us. Anyways, we wouldn't be been able and ready to get it. So we had to count these 50 days in order to receive the Torah. Now, how does this apply to us today? As we know, for now, during the period of the Omer, for other reasons, which we won't get into tonight, is that we also don't listen to music. There's no weddings. People technically can get engaged, but there's no parties with music during this time period. People generally don't buy new clothing. We don't say Shechianu because it's a mourning period until Lag BaOmer. And then we also still have the counting of the Omer. So for us today to utilize the energy and channel the energy of this time, what we're supposed to be working on for this 50-day period is on our character traits, on who we are, how we perceive things. And our sages teach us that these 50 days is the most powerful time, that if you focus on a certain character trait, you have the power. The energy of this time gives you the power to be able to change it more than any other time period during the year. Just like in Elul is a time that you can do teshuvah and you can say, okay, Hashem, I'm going to do better in this aspect of my spirituality. And that energy is that much stronger during that time period. so too with this time period with regards to our character. And that's why we're focusing on the character traits of our foremothers, of the female personalities of the Torah, so that we can figure out, okay, how am I going to utilize whatever it is that I'm learning, or whatever character trait that I feel that I need to work on in order for us to reach our greatest potential and to be ready by Matan Torah, by this Shavuot, to receive the Torah that was given to our ancestors a few thousand years ago. Okay, so I really wanted to take that time to really speak about why we're really focusing on these character traits, because this is the most perfect time to really hone in on who we are and what we need to work on. Okay. All right. So, okay, let's speak about Rivka Imeinu. Rivka Imeinu, we meet her through, obviously we meet her in the Parsha. We see that Avram Avinu, he does the Akedah. He sacrifices, he's about to sacrifice his son Yitzchak. The story goes, Hashem said, no, you do not touch him. You do not put a blemish on him. As soon as this episode ends, Abraham realizes, okay, I'm getting old. I have a son, Yitzchak. It's time for him to get married. So he approaches his servant, Eliezer, and he tells Eliezer, go to the land of Haran, where I'm from, and find a girl from this land for my son, from my family, in order to bring her back for my son Yitzchak to marry her. So, as the story goes, Eliezer goes to Haran. He travels there. Many miraculous things happen. They say that it was a 17-day journey, and Hashem condensed this trip to a few hours. It was a 3-hour journey, and he goes to, yes, mommy, come. Oh, yes.
It's very important.
Okay, go listen to
because I need to do the writing.
Okay, sweet. Go.
Ready?
So So he goes to Haran and he speaks to God and he says, Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like, give me the signs of how I'm going to know that this girl is the right one for Yitzchak. How am I going to find the right girl in Haran who's, family member of Abraham's family? Like, help me figure this out. So he tells Hashem, this is the sign that I'm going to get. The sign is going to be that they're going to say, I'm going to approach the girl. I'm going to say, can you please give me some water? And she's going to say, not only will I give you water, but I will also give your camels water. So he goes to this well, whatever, in the center of town. And lo and behold, of course, young Rivka is there. And he approaches her and he says this to her, can I please have some water? And of course, as we all know, she said, not only am I going to give you water, but I will also give your camels water until they are full. And she starts to go fetch the water. And our sages say that because she was so holy and she was something different and special, instead of her bending down to get the water rose up to her level and she was able to fetch the water. And not only did she fetch the water several times in order to feed not only Eliezer water, but also his camels. And this was very telling of her because Rivka came from a noble family in the area that she was from. Usually what happens is a maidservant, somebody who is, working for a member of the royal family or nobility would do this, but she herself did it. And Eliezer knew that this person was the one for Yitzchak. So story goes, he goes into the house of Betuel, which is her father, and Lavan, and, they have a whole discussion, and he, tells the father, look, I have a deed that Abraham gave Yitzchak, all of his possessions. He's a very wealthy man. So he, your daughter will be in a good place. He gives her jewelry. And long story short, they agree, and Rivka comes back with Eliezer to Yitzchak. Now, they go onto the field, and lo and behold, Yitzchak is there from a distance, and he is praying mincha, davening mincha, the afternoon prayers. Rivka sees him, says that she fell off her camel. She turns to Eliezer and she says, "Who is this?" And he turns to her and he says, "This is Isaac, this is Yitzchak, your husband." And when she sees him, she covers her face. Now, our sages tell us that the reason why she covered her face was because Yitzchak was so holy. There was so much light coming from him that she looked down and didn't want to see it. Like, she was in awe of him. She had a certain level of respect for him. And this is an important point that I want to drive in, because we're going to develop on this idea as we continue learning in depth, just telling the overall story. So she's in awe of him, and she realizes that this is somebody very holy and somebody of very high stature. So the story goes, they get married, and for 20 years they are a childless couple. And as we all know, they pray, Yitzchak and Rivka across from each other. Torah says that Hashem answered Yitzchak's prayers, not Rivka's, whatever that means. Not for us to get into in the time right now. But what happens is that Rivka is blessed with twins. She has 2 babies in her stomach, but she didn't know it at the time. What was happening is that there was a lot of pain that was happening. It was excruciating pain. It was abnormal pain for a typical pregnancy. And our sages teach us that, let's say she would go by a house of idol worship. One, there would be some sort of pain or kicking. And then when she would go by a Beit Midrash, a holy place, a place where they learned whatever Torah was at that time, there would be another form of pain or kicking. And she couldn't understand what was going on. Obviously, she was concerned maybe she'll lose the babies. She wanted to make sure that she was the one that was going to be able to give Yitzchak his heirs. She didn't want it to come through another woman. So, she was a bit nervous. So she goes to the prophet of the time and she asks him, "Look, this is my situation. Is this normal? I've never been pregnant before. What's going on?" And he tells her, "Look, there's 2 great nations within you. You have twins." And he says that one nation will be this way, one nation will be that way, and then the younger will serve the older. And she keeps this information to herself. So false alarm. Yeah. No, I'm not sure. Nobody really does any so I don't know. So she gets this prophecy and she keeps it to herself. She does not reveal it to her husband Isaac, to Yitzchak, because she tells herself that if he's meant to learn this information, he's on a higher level. I mean, he's a prophet. Hashem will somehow get this message over to him. So as the story goes, we know that she gives birth to Esav and Yaakov. And as time goes on, they're starting to really go into different directions. Yaakov is Ishtam. He's somebody who really sitting there learning. He sits in the tent. He's a holy person. And Esav, although he had potential to be great and to be holy and to be a part of the Jewish nation, by the way, he decides and makes choices to really go on the opposite way. He becomes a hunter. He's immoral with women. He does idol worship, everything that is pretty much the antithesis of his father, which goes against everything who his father Yitzchak is. But as we know, Yitzchak loved Esav as much as he loved his son Yaakov. And Rivka loved both of her sons, but she saw the truth. she saw that there's a difference between Yaakov, Jacob, and Esau. And because she saw that, she realized that her husband, Yitzchak, was getting towards the end of his life, and he was about to bless his sons. And of course, as we know, the eldest, the Bechor, the oldest son, usually gets the better blessing. That's just the way it is. And the more powerful blessing and the stronger blessing. And she realized, okay, this is not going to be okay. Isaac is not realizing, Yitzchak is not realizing the true essence of who Esau is. So I need to maneuver around here in order to make sure that Yaakov gets the proper blessing, and because the nation, the Jewish people, Bnei Israel, is going to be built through him. And she comes up with this whole plan. As we know that Yaakov goes and he brings a very good meat, and he puts this like fur on his arm because his brother Esau was furry, and Isaac at that time, Yitzchak, was blind, so he couldn't see. And as the story goes, he went and he received the blessing from Yitzchak. And this is where it's going to end for us. I found something very fascinating in these books, extremely fascinating, that really, at least to me, spoke it spoke volumes about character, how to handle yourself in situations, and how to handle situations with your spouse, with your husband, God willing, at the right time when all of you guys get married. In this book that I've been using by Rabbi Y.Y. Rubenstein, he writes here, when Rivka saw Yitzchak, as I had mentioned, for the first time, she took her veil and covered her face. It says it in Sefer Bereshit. The Hamek Davar, one of the commentaries, explains that the reason for her action was that Rivka was in awe of Yitzchak and even embarrassed to be in his presence. She didn't believe herself worthy of of him. They were simply two completely different kinds of human beings. Yitzchak had, after all, been willing to offer himself as a sacrifice to Hashem. That perception remained with her throughout her life. Rivka's perspective led to a very different approach to dealing with her husband than that of Sarah that we spoke about last week, okay? For the girls that weren't here last week, just to give a small recap, Sarah would directly go head to head with her husband Abraham. There is the instance where she told him, you need to get rid of Ishmael, your other son from your other wife, which is really one of the main ones that we see. She spoke her mind. She confronted him when she saw that there was something wrong. When she thought that there was a spiritual issue that would affect the family, she went head to head with him, so to speak, of course in a respectful way, but I'm saying like she didn't hold back from expressing herself. It says that if Sarah disagreed with her husband, she had no hesitation in letting him know. Sarah was upset with Abraham over Hagar and told him exactly what she expected him to do. Rivka's approach to her husband was born of the awe in which she held him. So she never openly challenged him, and there was never a clash, even when he was wrong. Okay? There's a distinction here. She did not openly challenge her husband. So let's look into that. What does that mean? What does that say to us? Shira Hockheimer writes here that Yitzchak and Rivka were married for 20 years and they still hadn't had children. As I said, She went, she learned, she saw that she's not carrying the ordinary children, and a prophecy that she was shared, she didn't go home and share it because she, as I said, she saw that she was a greater prophet than she was, and she intended him to know this information. Hashem himself would have told him. And so Rivka kept the news to herself. When the children were born, and later as they grew, this necessary secret changed how Yitzchak and Rivka dealt with their children. Yitzchak, as we said, loved Esau, and Hashem allowed Yitzchak to be fooled into believing that Esau was righteous and good. But Rivka saw past the ruse of her eldest son, and she loved Yaakov fiercely because of his goodness and purity. The Torah does not relate to us whether the couple discussed the difference in their opinions regarding their children. But what we learn in the Midrash, it tells us that Rivka's home still was the home that Sarah Imeinu had, meaning there was the Shabbat candles lit, the challah was lasted for a week. So despite disagreeing about such a fundamental issue over their children, Rivka was able to perform only kindness and never harm her husband throughout her marriage. So how was Rivka truthful? How does she embody truth when she's not speaking truthfully to her husband? She sees what Esau is doing. Yitzchak is blind. Hashem is allowing him to be fooled. He's not seeing Esau, his son, for who he is. And not only is he not seeing it for who he is, he's about to give him the biggest blessings, all of the blessings that are required in order to build the Jewish nation, to the son who is the epitome of immorality. And then not only does she not tell him, she concocts this scheme to trick him into not giving the blessing. She didn't speak the truth to him. Why? Why would she avoid all of this? Why would she navigate through X, Y, and Z in just saying him, just like Sarah did, hey, Hagar and her son Ishmael need to go. It is what it is. She's constantly maneuvering around him. Not only that, even more so, time goes on, this whole situation happens. Jacob gets the blessing of the firstborn. Esau all of a sudden realizes what just happened, what he gave up, and he's planning on a scheme to kill Yaakov. Rivka tells Yaakov, look, you need to go, you need to leave, because he's going to come after you and he's going to kill you. Go to my brother's house. He has daughters. Go there. Maybe then you'll try your luck there. And Yaakov is like, I can't run away without saying goodbye to my father. Like, what do you want me to do? She's like, don't worry. Let me figure this out. So she goes up to her husband, Yitzchak, and she says, hey, you know what? I'm a little bit concerned about Yaakov. I'm afraid that if he stays here, he might marry a girl from the Canaanim, from the Canaanites, one of the nations that lived in that land. And I don't think it's a good idea for him to stay here. I think maybe, don't you think it's a good idea we send him to Laban? We send him to my brother to kind of be there. You know, it's with the family. He might find a good Jewish girl there. Well, whatever. I mean, we weren't Jewish then, but he might find a good girl there. Thank you, honey. I should leave the door open. Hello.
She was looking
Hello. Look how lucky we are. Oh my God, you probably didn't get the updated flyer.
I'm like,
I'm sorry.
she has a one for a while. Now I have
Oh,
thought that the knocking was
oh, it was. Okay, I love you. I'm so
That's
sorry.
my fault.
Okay, no,
Sorry.
I had to think.
It's my fault.
Okay, so she, even here, she wasn't straight with him. She didn't tell him, hey, your son is going to go kill your other son. Like, wake up. Like, let's see. Like, hello. Like, get yourself together. Like, let me, like, give you the, like, the details of what's really happening. She, like, basically tells him, so what do you think? You think it's a good idea we send him to my brother's house? And he's like, yeah, fantastic idea. Good call. Send Yaakov out and everything will be fine. So Yaakov is able to say bye to his dad. Dad, I love you. I'm going to my, uncle's house. Thank you for everything. And he's able to leave with saying goodbye to his home. Says here that Rivka thought of a plan to accomplish her goals while saving her husband from undue suffering and anger. She says, she writes here, note what happened. For 63 years, Yitzchak had disagreed with Rivka's opinion of her children. He finally understood her. Okay, we'll get to that part. Okay, so we see that she's not being forward with him. I'm talking about the difference between Sarah and Rivka right now. Sarah confronted her husband head on. We see, as she said, she went straight to Abraham and she's like, you need to get rid of Hagar, Ishmael. These people are no good. They're not a good influence on Yitzchak. And then we come and see that Rivka has a completely different approach to how she deals with Yitzchak. She pretty much navigates everything in order to avoid telling him the truth of who Esav is. But how can somebody who literally manipulates, tells her son Yaakov, go put on this fur hand, go do this, go do that, so you can take the bracha, why wouldn't she just directly tell him, your son is evil, he's going to go kill your other son, this one is the holy one that your children, your nation is going to be built through, and this one is going to cause undue suffering for millennia. Come deal with him, figure this out, and don't give the brachas. And when Yaakov wants to leave, like, she still didn't tell him. She's like, go do this, go do that. How does this embody the Middah of truth? So, in Tomer Deborah, ladies, it says something unbelievable. We have to learn what the Torah's definition of truth is. What does the Torah say? Okay, what does it mean to be a truthful person? It writes here, the attribute points, it's the attribute of truth, to give truth to Yaakov, to give truth. The attribute points to the virtue of Yisrael. Average Jews who do not know how to go beyond the precise letter of their obligations are called Yaakov. Okay, Jacob, Yaakov had two names, Yaakov and Israel. Because they conduct themselves only according to what is strictly true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also has the attribute of truth on the side of justice and correctness. Towards those who act in this world with correctness, Hashem acts with truth. He has mercy on them on the side of correctness and justice. So too, a person must treat his fellow on the side of correctness and truth without veering from the justice of his fellow to have mercy on him with truth, just as Hashem has mercy on the average people with attribute of truth to rectify them. Okay, what does this mean? So it says here that the Gemara in Ketubot, discusses a case of a man who marries a woman who, to say it bluntly, is ugly. Genuinely ugly. I have yet to meet a bride who's ugly, in all honesty. But they're saying, so their friends and family come to the wedding to take part in this festivity. And it writes here that they want to encourage him with the praises of the bride's beauty. Well, you see it, Kala, like, oh, your wife is so beautiful. She's this, she's that. They give hal to the Khatan. The Kala is coming. They want to tell her, you look gorgeous tonight. But she's ugly. The bride. So what did they say? They said they want to praise the bride's beauty. The bride is beautiful and graceful, but after taking one look at her, they find themselves stuck in an unpleasant quandary. What should they say? So there's a machloket, there's a conflict between two very famous rabbis from the times of the Gemara. Beit Shammai says, praise the bride as she is. Don't go overboard. Okay, find something good about her and praise her. Beit Hillel says they should say that the bride is beautiful and graceful. And then the question asked Beit Shammai is, what if she's limping and blind? The Torah orders us not to lie. She's blind, she's limping, she's ugly. What do you want me to do? So Beit Hillel answers, according to you, what should we tell a person who made a bad purchase in the marketplace? Should we criticize it or praise it? Of course we should praise it. From here, the Gemara concludes that a person should always be da'ato me'overet im habriot. He should be in tune with the feelings of others, to know how they see things and understand the truth from the person's perspective. Do you hear this, ladies? To see the truth from the person's perspective and to be sensitive to where they're coming from. Beit Hillel holds that since it is a mitzvah to see things from the other person's point of view, it is appropriate to praise a purchase that someone has made since he apparently liked it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
This is complicated because many times, someone else's perspective is clearly not in line with the Torah.
Okay, so
while you know the truth, what truth is, there is their truth, your truth, of each person's individual truth, and then there's the truth, which you know very well to be true. So, for example, you say someone bought something. Okay, there are many objects that, let's say, someone bought, let's say, Chas v'shalom, one of your siblings bought a Buddha statue.
Right.
I'm not going to praise that.
Right. Okay, so we'll get into that. We'll do the distinctions, and that's a very good point that you brought up. Right now, Beit Hillel is just talking about something like an item of clothing. Some people, they buy something and they're very excited about it. Okay, and they're super excited. It's not your taste, but don't put a damper in it. Yeah, you know what I mean? Please pass me a tissue, ladies. I'm so sorry. There's something on. Thank you, honey.
No question.
Yes.
What if I'm asking for your honest opinion?
Okay, and we'll talk about that too. We'll talk. That's a fair question too. Let's hold off on the questions to finish this up, and then we'll talk about these distinctions that that you guys are bringing up because they're valid points. He says that. So Hillel saying just praise it. He likes it. He's excited. Okay, it's a shirt. You can see that, there, and it's not awful. Maybe it's not your taste. He says this is not considered dishonest since it's true from the other person's vantage point. Okay. And he writes that the Meiri also states there's a mitzvah to make the Chatan and Kala happier, to endear the bride to her husband, and to dance before them with words of praise, including praise of the Kala. A person need not be so worried that he might praise her with qualities that she does not really possess. Rather, he should praise her generously, even more than is fitting for her. A person's mind should be in tune with those around him, provided that this does not entail a chilul Hashem. Okay? He should not be exacting with people to speak or act towards them no more than the bare minimum of what they deserve. Rather, he should be generous in his deeds and speech. The more he does so, the more he is to be praised. So he writes here in and around the discussion of how to praise the Kala, whether she does or does not have the qualities for which she is praised, we learn an important practice that applies to many areas. If a person buys something that he thinks is nice and can no longer return it, final sale, there's no point in criticizing it. He likes it. It fits his taste. Rather than criticizing it, there's a mitzvah to praise it so that he will be happy with his purchase. Even if my opinion and the truth from my viewpoint, okay, not the Torah, from my viewpoint, is that he made a bad purchase, telling him so will just upset him for no reason. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also judges a person after taking into account the truth from a person's perspective. Look how great Hashem is. When he comes to judge us, he says, you know what? Let me see how Malka views the truth. Do you hear what this book is teaching us, ladies? That when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to judge us, he says, you know what? Before I judge my daughter, let me see how she holds truth in this world, even though it could be a little bit off. Even though it's not exactly the way it's supposed to be. Because I want to be sensitive to the feelings that she has. I want to be sensitive to the pain that she suffered. I want to be sensitive to the challenges that caused her to view truth from this point of view. On the one hand, as you said, yes, there is objective truth. The attribute of strict justice claims that there is an unpardonable offense when a lowly creation dependent on Hashem for his very survival dares to sin against Hashem who watches his every move. This is fair. It seems fair. Such a small and insignificant creature, a human being. And Hashem, how dare a person sin against Hashem? But what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do in his infinite greatness? He doesn't see it this way. Hashem understands people according to their situations. And we say, you are their creator and you know the Yetzer. You know what's going on internally. You know that battle that's happening within them because they're flesh and blood. Hashem takes into consideration that he created man with all his failings and desires. He understands the big picture of the person's situation. Hashem is good and correct, therefore he shows people who made mistakes their ways. Rashi explains that Hashem seeks to vindicate his creations, therefore he guides a person who makes his mistake on the path of teshuvah. In the case discussed in the Gemara, when we see that there's no dishonesty or insincere flattery in treating each person according to that person's outlook, this is the real truth that the Torah obligates us to follow. Rivka Imeinu embodied this character trait, ladies. She saw the truth. She saw that her sons were two completely different beings. She understood that her husband was not an average person that she married, and she respected him for his level of greatness, and she respected him for who he was and what he embodied, and therefore, because of the respect, she took the characteristic trait of truth and she maneuvered it through the viewpoint of her husband until he came to realize, oh, my wife was right. My wife was right in orchestrating the switching of the birthright. And my wife was right to send away my son to the house of Lavan. But Rivka was sensitive to her husband. She didn't want to cause him undue pain by saying, hey, your son Esav is about to go kill your other son Yaakov. She orchestrated something. She didn't tell Yaakov, I'm so sorry. You're so wrong. You are so wrong in this situation. Your son Esav is an idol worshiper, has many wives, does not so good thing with not so appropriate things with married women. He kills, he haunts, and he's defrauding you into thinking that he's a righteous person because he shows you proper respect. He does kibud av. He does kibud av. He respected his father. She didn't crush him and his viewpoint. There's distinctions, ladies. This is an avenue that we take. Sometimes in life, yes, we have to be like Sarah Imeinu, where we confront head on. But speaking the truth head on is not the only avenue to get to where you need to go. And what we have to develop in ourselves, especially for the women who are more strong character, is to figure out, how can I embody the character of truth? How can I embody the character of Emet and still be sensitive to the viewpoint and the pain and the sensitivity of another person when it doesn't call for the strict truth, when I don't have to go head to head with them, when I can be sensitive to their pain, when I can understand who they are, when I can understand where they came from. And that is who Rivka Imeinu is. And that is what we need to practice. And that's where the sensitivity comes in. And when we're being told here in the Tomer Devorah that Hashem is so sensitive that even when it comes to judging us, He takes our viewpoint and He takes our suffering and He takes what we think might be the truth, even though, as you said, Jacqueline, that the truth is laid out pretty much black and white, more or less, because we have the Torah that teaches us. But even then, Hashem is like, you know what? She had a hard year. She had some tough challenges. And our goal in this life, ladies, one of our really, it's not, of course, I don't discourage keeping Shabbat. I don't discourage tzniut. I talk about these things and I push students who I know are ready to keep Shabbat, tzniut, kashrut, at whatever degree, whatever level. But that's only one half of the project. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to develop our character. He tells us, look, these are the traits that I have. I'm compassionate, I'm kind, I'm good, There's so much to Hashem. And He's saying that I expect you to, in this lifetime, emulate me. And this period of time during the Omer that we're sitting in right now, this 50 days that we have, until we go into Beit Knesset and we're standing there ready to reclaim the Torah, we have to think to ourselves, am I an Adam? Am I a good person? We all have our flaws. But am I doing right by people? Am I sensitive towards them? Am I good towards them? Do I let go? Am I understanding Hashem is so good to me? Every day he lets go. And I mentioned this in our last class last week. I believe this I did. If you throw a stone at a king, the king of Saudi Arabia is a king. Yeah, I did. We talked about that. How I thought he was. If I go to the king of Saudi Arabia and I take a stone and I chuck it at him, I can assure you that his guards will all jump on me and I will be given capital punishment. He's a king of a country. We throw stones at HaKadosh Baruch Hu every single day with our behavior and our complaints and all the things. I myself, sitting here. Why did this happen? Why did that happen? I can't daven right now. I'm tired. Oh, I'll have to say Shema. Oh, endless. But what does Hashem do? She had a rough day. She's going to wake up tomorrow morning because I know she's going to do better. I want to give her another chance because I see the potential in my daughter. I see how great she is. I see how much she can accomplish. I know what her future holds. It's okay that she threw another stone at me today. And if Hashem can be like that, the King of all kings, how much more so should we be like that? Not only with Hashem, not only with others, but with ourselves too, ladies. Your relationship with yourself, the forgiveness that you should have for yourself, the kindness that you have for yourself, all these things apply to all three aspects of the relationships that we need to develop. Bezrat Hashem, ladies, that we should really utilize this time to figure out what character trait we need to work on so that when we come to receive the Torah by Shavuot, we really can look up and say, okay, Hashem, I'm a little bit more adab today. Remember that the Beit HaMikdash was broken, was destroyed, not because we didn't keep Shabbat, because we didn't keep kosher, it's because of the way that we treated each other. Hashem wants us to really develop our character trait, to become refined. We're a nation of prince and princesses, and we have to act accordingly. And the work begins with us.